We knew we were stretching limits because we could feel the tearing sensation that goes with that stretching. I mean, we were really.
What if a movie now preserved in the National Film Registry, a film considered so culturally significant that the Library of Congress deemed it essential to American history, almost collapsed multiple times during production? Most films are lucky to be considered the best at one thing. However, Terminator 2 is simultaneously the best sci-fi, best action, and best sequel of its era. But did you know that some of the scenes you remember only exist because something went catastrophically wrong and someone had to find a creative solution in the moment? From how ecstasy gave birth to the idea of the movie, to casting secrets and more. By the end of this video, you're going to see Terminator 2 differently, so let's pull back the curtain and see what happened. Ecstasy gave birth to Terminator 2. James Cameron's story idea for Terminator 2. Judgment Day came with the help of a specific substance. In an oral history of the film published by The Ringer on the film's 30th anniversary, Cameron revealed that the idea came to him while he was high on ecstasy. He was writing notes for Terminator when he heard Sting's 1985 song called Russians. The lyrics said, "I hope the Russians love their children too." That line struck him deeply. Cameron explained, "You know what? The idea of a nuclear war is just so antithetical to life itself. That's where the kid came from." This single thought allowed him to view the story in a new light. Instead of only telling another tale about machines and war, he wanted to show something more relatable. He imagined Sarah Connor not just as a fighter, but also as a mother, and that gave birth to the character of John Connor. Without that song and that moment, John may never have been written into the story. However, Cameron still needed the right person to bring it all together. He decided to call Linda Hamilton, who had played Sarah Connor in the first film. Cameron remembered, "I called her up and I said, look, they want to pay us a lot of money to make a sequel. Are you in or are you out? But just between you and me, I don't really want to do it if Sarah doesn't come back. And I don't want to recast Sarah, so you've got to say you're in." At that time, he and Linda had not been in close contact since the first movie, as she was busy making another film somewhere in the South. If Linda had said no, the sequel might not have had Sarah Connor's return, and John Connor might not have existed at all. A broken printer and a change of heart. Did you know that Terminator 2 nearly did not happen because of a broken printer, a rushed limo, and a hot sheet of paper shoved into a gym bag? James Cameron was writing until the very last second. He had to get into a limousine and rush to the airport to catch a large charter jet. At the time, Carolco was flying all its stars and filmmakers to Cannes in early May of 1990. Cameron, who was already 20 minutes late and was scrambling to get the script done and printed, realized his printer had broken down. Cameron pulled the pages out of the laser printer while they were still hot. Then he put a clip on them and shoved them in a gym bag while he raced to the airport. When he walked on the plane, all the big agents, movie stars, and filmmakers were already sitting there, and with the silence, you could hear a pin drop. Cameron had to walk down the whole aisle past all those staring eyes. He admitted people were thinking, "Oh yeah, you think you're special, don't you?" Cameron then handed the pages to Arnold on the plane. Arnold Schwarzenegger admitted in the oral history of the film published by The Ringer, "I read it on the plane on the way over there. I remember that very well." At Cannes, Arnold read the script, and he was honest. He admitted that he read the script several times and came across something he knew nothing about. "What is polyalloy?" he would occasionally ask Cameron. By the time he was done, Arnold Schwarzenegger had his doubts about the script. During breakfast, Cameron could tell that something was bugging Arnold. They were friends at this point and were discussing over oatmeal, nuts, and dates when Cameron noticed a change in his mood. Then Arnold said, "Jim, I have a big problem with the script." Cameron asked what it was, and Arnold replied, "I don't kill anybody." Cameron had the idea that this was a plot twist nobody would see coming. Arnold, however, thought otherwise. How do you make people believe this is the same Terminator who once kicked down doors and shot everyone? Now he protects a child, Arnold inquired. Cameron did all he could to explain to Arnold, even though he thought it was strange. "It was strange, but I thought if we pull it off, it will be huge," Arnold admitted. Casting secrets of Terminator 2. With Schwarzenegger and Hamilton confirmed, James Cameron and casting director Molly Finn turned to building the rest of the cast. They didn't want famous actors. Instead, they needed fresh talent. And that's how they discovered Edward Furlong. He admitted, I was at a boys' club in Pasadena just hanging out, and Molly was kind of looking at me from across the way. At first he thought it was strange, even joking to her, "What do you want, frog lips?" Then when she asked if he had ever acted, he revealed, "My dad films my birthdays." For Cameron, that authenticity was precisely what he wanted. He explained that many young actors followed the book, but with Furlong there was a pain, a surliness, and an intelligence that made him stand out. Furlong recalled his nerves at the final audition, admitting, "It went from hundreds of kids to me and one other kid, and I'm sweating balls." When Cameron finally chose him, he told Molly that calling Furlong was going to change his life, and for the boy, it truly did. Joe Morton also made a strong impression when he auditioned for the role of Miles Dyson. He admitted that when Cameron asked why he wanted it, he answered with a Richard Pryor joke, "Hollywood either kills off the black actors in sci-fi or they're not in it at all, because they don't think we're going to be here in the future." That honesty struck a chord with Cameron, and Morton soon landed the part. The search for the T-1000 was even more intense. Cameron wanted someone young and lean, a direct contrast to Schwarzenegger's personality. For a moment, Billy Idol was even considered. Unfortunately, his motorcycle crash ended that possibility. Then Robert Patrick stepped in. He remembered Molly telling him after their first meeting, "Whatever you're doing right now, I like what you're doing. Let's go put that on film." When he finally read the script, it took him 5 hours to complete. "It just blew my mind. I went in there, put the script down on James's desk, and I said, 'I can do this.'" Cameron agreed and gave him a screen test. He recalled how Patrick completely transformed before him, and from that moment the role was his. Schwarzenegger also praised him. "He was just so opposite. I was big, he was lean, I was powerful, he was fast, he was perfect." So while the film already had its stars, it was the risks taken on unpopular actors like Furlong, Morton, and Patrick that helped make Terminator 2 legendary. The injury. People often think acting is easy, but the truth is, filming can be extremely dangerous. Stunts, effects, and unexpected accidents can leave actors with serious injuries, and that's what happened here. Linda Hamilton gave her best performance as Sarah Connor in Terminator 2, but one scene came at a significant cost. The scene takes place at Pescadero Hospital, where John Connor and the T-800 come to rescue Sarah. The T-1000 is chasing them, and the three try to escape in an elevator. That moment, known as the elevator shootout, is marked by intense gunfire. Sarah and the T-800 shoot their weapons while the T-1000 attacks them with his liquid metal arms. It looked exciting on screen, but behind the scenes, something went very wrong. Linda had forgotten to put her earplugs back in between takes, so when the firearms went off inside that small elevator, her ears took the full force of the deafening blasts. They weren't real bullets, but the sound was loud enough to do damage. Unfortunately, she suffered permanent hearing loss in one ear, and to this day, it is still very much the same. At the time, the crew and actors thought her reaction was just acting because they didn't realize she was in real pain. So Linda pushed herself back up and kept filming, finishing the scene exactly as scripted. Although the injury never fully healed, Linda still built a great career. The Terminator films made her famous and wealthy, even as she later struggled with bipolar disorder and depression. After nearly 30 years away from the role, she returned in Terminator: Dark Fate in 2019, proving again why Sarah Connor remains one of the most unforgettable characters in action movies. The 7-year wait. After the success of The Terminator in 1984, there was studio talk of a sequel almost immediately. Everyone in Hollywood could see the film was a hit, and they wanted more. However, some issues led to a 7-year delay in beginning production, and those problems almost killed the sequel before it could start. Cameron always knew he wanted the villainous Terminator in the film to be a liquid metal CGI creation. He had this vision in his mind of a robot made of mercury that could change shape and become anything. However, he had to wait for the technology to catch up with his ideas. The computer effects simply didn't exist yet to recreate the vision in his head. Cameron had experimented with CGI briefly in The Abyss in 1989, and that gave him a chance to test some digital work with the water creature. After that success, he decided the time and technology were finally right for Terminator 2. The visual effects had caught up to his imagination after years of waiting. Yet, there was another problem, and this one was about business and control. Hemdale Film Corporation owned 50% of the rights to the franchise and didn't want Carolco to produce a sequel, or for Cameron to direct one. Hemdale's initial choice was for John McTiernan, who had directed Predator and Die Hard in 1987 and 1988, to direct Terminator 2 instead, mainly because they thought McTiernan would be better for the job. Cameron must have been furious, but he couldn't do anything because Hemdale owned half the rights. Unfortunately for Hemdale, in the late 80s, they hit financial difficulties and everything changed. Carolco came in with a $5 million bid for the rights to the Terminator series, and Hemdale had no choice but to accept the money. They were desperate, needed cash, and that $5 million deal cleared the way for Cameron to make his sequel the way he wanted, finally. The art of filmmaking. Cameron had always liked science. When he first started, he thought he might want to become a marine biologist or physicist. However, he also enjoyed writing, so he was pulled in many different directions. He genuinely loved the idea of being in another world, and he toyed with the idea of time traveling. Gradually, he realized that film could accommodate both his interests in science and art. Film became the answer to combining everything he cared about. With the help of a book called Screenplay: The Foundations of Screenwriting, Cameron figured out how to write a screenplay. He sat down with a friend and they wrote a little 10-minute script. To bring the script to life as a movie, they raised money and shot it in 35mm with special effects, models, and Matty shots. They were trying to do professional-level work with no experience. It was a bit like a doctor doing his first appendectomy after having only read about it, Cameron admitted. He also revealed that they spent the first half day of the shoot just trying to figure out how to get the camera running, he revealed. They rented all the necessary equipment, including lenses, a camera, and film stocks. When they were done filming, they returned all the gear to the small studio they had rented in Orange County. When asked about his background in special effects, Cameron told the interviewer he was entirely self-taught. When asked to explain how he learned everything, Cameron explained that he had always known that people seek out the information and knowledge they need. "It's like a divining rod to water," Cameron said. "Nobody will give you the pathway," he admitted, so Cameron took matters into his hands. He would go down to the USC library and retrieve any theses that graduate students had written about optical printing, front screen projection, dye transfers, or any other topic related to film technology. That way he could sit down, read it, and if they would let him photocopy it, he would. If not, he would go ahead to make notes. "I had files and files stacked on my desk of how all this stuff was done," he admitted. Then Cameron hit on the idea that the future is determined by something happening now. This was the core idea that would drive everything. So what's the most extreme example of that he could think of? If the world has been devastated by nuclear war, and if global events are predicated on one person who is the least likely person you can imagine, a 19-year-old waitress who works at Bob's Big Boy, Cameron revealed. Bob's Big Boy was a fast food restaurant in Southern California, and making an ordinary waitress responsible for humanity's fate was a perfect fit. Terminator 2 grew from that one idea and evolved naturally from there. The canal chase. One of the most talked about sequences from Terminator 2 has to be the T-800 chasing after John Connor with the T-1000 behind. After riding his Harley into a canal, the T-800 makes a fantastic jump. That beautiful jump was done with wires and digital effects. However, all of Arnold Schwarzenegger's most dangerous motorcycle stunts were done by stuntman Peter Kent. Kent wore facial prosthetics to help him resemble Schwarzenegger, as he was also the first stuntman in the business ever to wear facial prosthetics as a stunt double. The prosthetics were applied by Jeff Dawn and created by Stan Winston's studio, who gave Kent the facial features and jawline of Arnold Schwarzenegger. For the film's 2017 3D re-release, Schwarzenegger's face was digitally placed onto Kent's body. Although the canal chase appears to have been shot in one location, it actually covered over 10 miles. The scene lasts just over 4 minutes and is one of the film's best sequences. The main opening stunt had the big Freightliner truck jumping from the high freeway into the canal's dry surface. To achieve this, the stunt crew built a large false wall for the truck to crash through. This wall also concealed the large ramp required for the car to achieve sufficient height during the jump. With a long run to build speed, the car smashes through the wall and crashes onto the canal's surface. Then it continues to chase John Connor on his small motorcycle. This exact location was used for the T-800 huge motorcycle jump. The jump happened just to the left of the truck's jump point. Cameron insisted the stunt use the actual Harley-Davidson. He didn't want a lighter, stripped-down bike like other movies used because he felt that would pull viewers out of the moment. Stunt coordinator Joel Kramer then used 2 construction cranes positioned 600 feet apart. A 1-inch cable stretched between them with an 8-foot spreader bar in its center. The motorcycle, with Peter Kent on board, hung from it like a puppet. Another cable attached to a truck pulled Kent and the bike off the bridge at 35 miles per hour. He then sailed 85 feet through the air before landing. Also, the cable between the cranes allowed only 185 pounds of impact when landing. This stopped the motorcycle from breaking apart and kept Kent from getting badly hurt. The bike alone weighed 780 pounds without Kent's weight added to it. Kent was incredibly proud of his accomplishment. He said, "My motorcycle work and the bike jump put me in the Hollywood Stuntmen's Hall of Fame and are rated by CNN as one of the top 10 stunts of all time. That's something that no one can ever take away from you." Kent admitted the prosthetics were tough to wear. He said, "I was the first guy ever in the business to wear facial prosthetics as a stunt double. The dreaded mask, glued onto my face for 12+ hours a day, still makes me shiver when I think about it. However, that uncomfortable mask helped create one of cinema's most memorable action scenes. The use of live models. The robots in the future war scenes at the beginning of Terminator 2 look real, and that's because they are real. The special effects team used large-scale automated models. They filmed these models and combined that footage with shots of actors in military clothing, creating a seamless picture of future warfare. But that's not all. The famous Terminator endoskeletons in battle were made using 2 methods, with Peter Kleinow handling the stop-motion animation and Stan Winston creating the animatronics. Winston also created a life-size robotic copy of Arnold Schwarzenegger, which was eventually used for a scene with the T-800. Furthermore, 4 Terminator endoskeletons were created for the film. 2 were fully working ones controlled with cables and radio controls, while the other 2 were just for background shots. The team also used molds from the original Terminator movie, but made some improvements to it. The future war scene 2 was filmed at an abandoned steel mill in Fontana, California. This location covered about half a square mile, while the production team added burned vehicles from a 1989 fire at Universal Studios to make it look more destroyed. The Hawaiian shorts. At the start of the film, Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-800 arrives from the future. He appears without clothes and walks into a bar. The people inside gasp and laugh as they stare at him, their eyes drifting downward. But here's the twist. Some of those shocked looks were real because Arnold decided to prank the whole crew. Instead of showing up unclothed, he walked in wearing Hawaiian board shorts. Director James Cameron later explained that the extras were told to keep a straight face. But when Arnold entered in those wild shorts, everyone looked down in surprise, which made the scene even funnier. But that wasn't the only secret behind the movie. Linda's twin.
Nobody knows how she was used in the steel mill.
There's another scene that surprised fans for a very different reason. During one of the most intense moments, the T-1000 changes into Sarah Connor, and suddenly, Sarah is staring at herself. You might think this was done with special effects, but it wasn't. Instead, the team had a perfect solution. Linda Hamilton has a twin sister named Leslie, and they brought her in to play the other Sarah. Although Leslie was not an actress, she agreed to take part. Screenwriter William Wisher explained that Linda's twin was used so both Sarahs could be in the same frame. Initially, the filmmakers had planned to use a trick shot, but upon Leslie's arrival, they realized she was the perfect fit. The scene was filmed in a freezing steel mill, and both sisters had to be sprayed with water for the shot. Leslie quickly learned how hard the job could be, even for just one night. However, it was still much easier than creating a computer-generated double at the time, and the result is still one of the most memorable scenes in the movie. The making of a strong character. When James Cameron spoke about Sarah Connor, he admitted, "This idea that we invented the strong woman in the 80s is bullshit. They've been there in Hollywood the whole time. But building a movie around one was really the breakthrough." He wanted to show that strong women had always been present, but the difference was finally putting one at the center of a blockbuster. Jeanette Goldstein, who played John Connor's foster mother, said Cameron wrote women as they were, without any of the fluff over, "Ooh, look at that big, strong woman." Cameron had initially admitted that the inspiration for Terminator 2 came along with ecstasy. However, having this creative breakthrough while high didn't mean Cameron could just start filming. He needed to get his lead actress back, and that wouldn't be simple. Cameron called Linda Hamilton, who had portrayed Sarah Connor in the original 1984 film, but there was a complication. He and Hamilton hadn't stayed close after the first movie. They had been romantically involved during that production, but that relationship had ended. "We hadn't really hung out all that much since the first film," he revealed. Hamilton had moved on with her life and career when Cameron decided to reach out to her about the sequel. She was making a movie somewhere down south. He knew the entire project depended on Hamilton saying yes, so he made his pitch direct and honest. "I called her up and I said, look, they want to pay us a lot of money to make a sequel. Are you in or are you out?" he asked her. But Cameron didn't stop there because he needed to ensure she understood the importance of this. "But just between you and me, I don't really want to do it if Sarah doesn't come back. And I don't want to recast Sarah, so you've got to say you're in," Cameron admitted, telling her. So how did Linda Hamilton prepare for such a role? Linda Hamilton's intense training. When the movie begins, Sarah Connor is already transformed. William Wisher explained, "When you first see her, she's doing pull-ups on her bed and she's got muscles." Goldstein remembered, "She got herself into this incredible shape. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger was impressed. He compared it to Sylvester Stallone's look in First Blood 2. He said the first reaction people had was, 'Holy shit.'" Joe Morton remembered one moment in San Jose before the Cyberdyne scene. He saw Hamilton coming from the gym and admitted he was embarrassed because she was in better shape than he was. Arnold also recalled how Hamilton trained by running on the beach with her trainer Uzi, who made her do it in boots and combat gear. Linda Hamilton herself later explained, "I learned to load clips, change mags, check out a room upon entry, and verify kills, because Sarah would have, and it was sheer hell." Schwarzenegger admitted, "It inspired me to train hard. It was really one of the most amazing transformations all around that I've ever seen in my 40-something years of acting." But Linda was not the only one who stood out. What about Arnold himself? Arnold's presence on set. Robert Patrick, who played the T-1000, said, "He's Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger. I grew up watching him on the wide world of sports. He created the whole bodybuilding world. I mean, he's that charismatic." Joe Morton explained that Arnold was aware of his strengths and weaknesses as an actor. William Wisher added that his presence alone gave the movie weight, saying, "Arnold's presence lends itself to gravitas." Patrick also remembered how Arnold supported him, watching take after take, smoking a cigar and giving a thumbs up. Wisher revealed that they kept Arnold's dialogue short, not because he was weak, but because having someone with that presence speaking mostly in tiny bites gave more power to the character. Cameron said Arnold knew how to keep it together, letting Linda and Edward Furlong shine while he played it down the middle. And for young Edward Furlong, working with Arnold was overwhelming. Edward Furlong's first experience. Edward Furlong was just 13 years old when he played John Connor. He admitted, "I was a 13-year-old kid in Predator and Total Recall. He was Arnold. It was my first movie. I was so starstruck, I just couldn't believe it." Danny Cooksey, who played John's friend Tim, remembered that Furlong's performance felt genuine because he was simply a kid having fun. Arnold also understood how tough it was. He said, "It's tough to go in to act for the first time in front of cameras in front of like 50 people standing around. The first time I was in a movie, I knew how scary it was, and I can imagine what it was like as a 13-year-old kid." Furlong believed that working beside Arnold helped him overcome that fear. And Schwarzenegger explained how he handled it. "I felt like it was up to me to make him my friend, rather than being his mentor. I just started playing games with him and hanging out with him so that when we eventually started doing the scenes together, he was not any different." Cameron said Arnold became like a father figure to Furlong, though he also teased him. He recalled Arnold pushing Eddie to do push-ups and saying, "Come on, Eddie, don't be so lazy. You've got to get fit. You've got to get fit." And that bond between them showed on screen. The hype around Terminator 2. The build-up to Terminator 2 was massive, and unlike many big movies that failed to live up to the hype, this one delivered. When it was released on July 3, 1991, it became the biggest film of the year, making over $520 million worldwide. For more than 10 years, it even held the record as the highest-grossing R-rated movie of all time. Viewers loved it, critics praised it, and fans could not stop repeating lines like, "I'll be back," and "Hasta la vista, baby." Linda Hamilton also became an icon. And by November, she was even hosting Saturday Night Live. But how did the cast and crew feel when they saw the film for the first time? The first screenings? Producer Mario Casar remembered watching the effects in Cameron's office. He said, "I see all the effects, the floor becoming the T-1000, the Mercury Man, and then I said, oh my God, this is going to be unbelievable." Dennis Muren also felt inspired after seeing the results. He admitted, "If we hadn't had Terminator 2, we wouldn't have been able to do Jurassic Park." Even Cameron believed that TT2 was the spark that pushed studios to fund bigger visual projects. Actor Joe Morton recalled being blown away at the cast screening. He said, "I thought the only thing people would remember is how Arnold shot him in the knee. Then I saw the film and realized it had done everything Jim promised." Even Arnold himself admitted, "Jim asked me what I thought of it. I said, oh, it is fantastic. This movie's going to be huge." The cast and fame. The premiere for TT2 was massive. Danny Cooksey recalled, "Everything about that movie was just on this enormous scale." Composer Brad Fiedel compared it to the first film, saying that people laughed at the wrong times in 1984, but for TT2, the crowd was entirely in it. For Edward Furlong, however, the experience was overwhelming. He joked, "I need to show up with a chick, so I reached out to Soleil Moon Frye and we became friends." Robert Patrick, however, struggled with the sudden fame. He admitted, "I wasn't ready for the celebrity part of it. Business guys would stop me in Chicago and say, 'Do the T-1000 walk, do the run.'" Morton even joked that in his household, it became the only movie he was remembered for. A franchise that kept growing. Although Judgment Day was halted in the movie, the franchise itself continued. It later produced a TV series and 4 more films. The last one, Terminator Dark Fate in 2019, brought back Schwarzenegger, Hamilton, and Cameron as a producer. Cameron admitted he was surprised at how well TT2 still holds up. Some cars may look like they're from the early 1990s, but the movie itself feels timeless. Actor Xander Berkeley explained, "It's one of those movies people watch 50 times. People even wore out their VHS tapes." Robert Patrick added, "I'm lucky that people still recognize me as the T-1000. That's not a bad thing." Today, Terminator 2 is simultaneously the best SCI-Fi, best action, and best sequel of its era. The meaning behind T2. Even though it is an action film, TT2 also carried deeper ideas. Schwarzenegger revealed in the oral history of the film published by The Ringer on the film's 30th anniversary. Besides the line, "I'll be back," the philosophy itself is good. Cameron pointed out that it is even more relevant today because of artificial intelligence. Back then, AI was just a fantasy, but now it is real and a concern. So he threw the question, even if we win the fight against machines, how do we define ourselves? Schwarzenegger also believed the story carried a message of hope. He explained, "There is no fate but what we make for ourselves. We don't have to take this shit that's coming our way. We can go and create a future we want, but we just have to fight for it." The alternate ending that could have changed everything. What if Terminator 2 had ended in a very different way? The movie we all know closes with hope, suggesting that Judgment Day has been stopped. Yet, later sequels found ways to undo that idea. However, an alternate ending was filmed that would have given the story a true sense of closure. In that version, Sarah Connor appears 30 years older. She is sitting in a park, watching her son, now a senator, play with his daughter. In her voiceover, Sarah reflects on a world free from cyborgs and the apocalypse. This could have been a better conclusion for the franchise because it would have left no room for more sequels to rewrite the story. But would fans have accepted a hopeful finish? Or was the darker, open-ended tone the reason T2 stayed so powerful? The sequels that came after TT2 often changed direction, creating inconsistencies in the story. Arnold Schwarzenegger admitted, "It makes no difference to me, absolutely none." He explained that the confusion came from studios changing hands over the years. Each director goes in a different direction, and it's a systemic thing. The way those franchises are being acquired, made available, and then going into bankruptcy, only to be bought by someone else. Now it goes back to Jim Cameron and Gale Ann Hurd. That's what sometimes creates the inconsistencies. If it were always to stay with one studio and one ownership, then that wouldn't happen. This shows Arnold never got stuck on the contradictions. He simply understood it as part of Hollywood. Of course, when he first said, "I'll be back," he truly meant it. Arnold returned many times after TT2. He starred in 2003's Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, and 2015 Terminator Genesis. His digital image even appeared in 2009 Terminator Salvation, while Linda Hamilton provided her voice, one of the rare times she returned after the second film. However, 2019's Dark Fate decided to ignore all those sequels. It followed only the events of the first two movies, leaving years of hard work and storylines behind. That might seem frustrating, yet Arnold took it in stride. Arnold explained what mattered to him, saying, "To me, what was always important was that I was working with good directors. The story for my character was good, and that's all I care about." He even admitted he understood why Linda Hamilton ignored the later sequels. "I don't care if Linda Hamilton says, 'Well, I ignored number 3, number 4, number 5, which I totally understand because she wasn't in it, so of course, she should ignore it. And Jim Cameron was not working on it, so he should ignore it as well. That's perfectly fine, I totally get it, and I'm thrilled that now they are involved." So there you have it. Out of all these facts, which one surprised you the most? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Thank you for watching.